Hello, fellow pioneers. It is Wednesday again. Just for those who maybe have missed some of the lives, my name is Joy Williams of JD Williams Trauma Clearing Badass, and I am your guest practitioner here between now and January 2021 in Be a Pioneer. We are doing the Redefine Challenge, and right now we're talking about a lot of terms. In the future, we're going to do some creative art activities. And today, we are talking about archetypes and the energy around them. What the heck are they, first of all? Why we should care about them. And then also, not get too wrapped up or tied into them either. So, we had a wide variety of responses regarding archetypes this week. Everything from archetypes and shadows are my jam to I'm not really sure what they are. Alyssa mentioned that they're rife with meaning, and that archetypes are very helpful in conveying those metaphorical scenarios, which I could not agree more. So before we get into redefining the term archetypes, I'm going to give you a little bit of historical information and background for those of you that aren't familiar, just about what the archetypes are and some ways that folks work with archetypes. So you're probably familiar with concepts of myth and gods and goddesses. So this is not exactly what we're talking about. We are talking about ancient things, but we're not going back so far as the Greeks today. So Carl Jung pinpointed or created the concept of archetypes, and he defined a large number of them, specifically 12 primary ones. But others have developed many more since then as well. So in that concept, archetypes are patterns of instinctual behavior. Okay, we're going to talk about the dictionary definition and redefine it in a minute, but in context of Jungian and spiritual practices, these are patterns of our instinctual behavior. They are a collectively inherited unconscious idea, pattern of thought, image that is universally present in our individual psyches. I'm going to say that again, and I'm going to read it just so that it sinks into your brains, right? So archetypes are patterns of instinctual behavior. They are a collectively inherited unconscious idea, pattern of thought, image, etc., that is universally present in individual psyches. In other words, we all have archetypes floating around. We all interact with people who are in their archetypes, in their behavior, in their lives. So by definition, if you're acting out of an archetypal pattern in your day-to-day life without awareness, they're going to dictate the results of the life that you're having. Period, point blank. If you are in an archetypal lane, you will be acting out of these unconscious behaviors. I mean, take the world stage, for example. Many archetypal examples happening right now in our world that we can watch. So, my favorite Carl Jung quote is, "Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And also, if we think about that collectively, until we all collectively make the unconscious conscious, our whole planet is being run by these energetic patterns that we collectively inherited, and we all have no idea, no concept, no awareness that our intimate relationships, our business, our everything is being dictated by something that we're not even aware of. Might be a little scary, huh? So there are many, many ways to engage in archetypal work. You can, work with an actual Jungian analyst in a therapy context if you want. You can do dream analysis. You can use tools like shadow alchemy, which I'll tell you a little more about. Carolyn Myss is a great resource. She is a spiritual teacher and self-defined mystic who has written many books on archetypes and healing and transformation. So, literally you could Google many options for working on archetypes and learning more. There's lots of great visuals. If you have any questions or you want to know more, I can also point you in the direction of some different free resources that way. So to give you some examples of major archetypes, you're probably familiar with Maiden, Mother, Crone, for example. There's things like Hero, Trickster, Jester, Warrior, Queen is one we're probably familiar with. At least I know some of us are. And I'm all for the spiritual development and the exploration. But there can be too much of a good thing. And when you're just learning about the archetypes, and if if you look up Carolyn Myss list, there's hundreds, and that can be really overwhelming. And there's a lot of like you can get really lost in that and think you're doing archetypal work on a surface level, but really you're not pinpointing your core energy. There's also the opportunity for some to get so caught up in like the darker archetypes in the shadow that, some folks get really caught up on like banishing or like killing their shadow, and that they become so tied to shadow mastery that it seems like that they've lost the big picture of like the purpose, which is to clear your energy, to engage more authentically and freely in the world, and really like to sort out your soul's journey in this life. So it can be a really double-edged sword to work with archetypes and do shadow work. They're really, really great for pinpointing the like with precision, the unconscious instinctual behavior that you're repeatedly enacting, and it gives you a really good framework for seeing yourself. So I'm not saying archetypes should be thrown out the window. In fact, I absolutely use them, but ultimately the goal is to climb out of that well-worn energy trench of whatever archetype you're in and free yourself from any mandates that are unconsciously pushing you where where your life is going to go. That's going to allow you to have freedom and choice in your life, and choice in who you show up as in the world and how you're being in the world, how you're being in your most intimate relationships, and how you're being in your business, and how you relate to money and time and all the things, right? So to go back to redefining, the post that I put was about the dictionary definitions of archetypes. And those definitions are a very typical example of a certain person or thing. Very typical. I don't know about you, but typical sounds pretty boring to me. And then an original that's been imitated. An original that's been imitated. So, are you really interested in staying inside of like the land of archetypes that are already defined by someone else? Do you want to stay in the box of these repeating patterns in your life? And repeating patterns that we're all in on the whole planet that have gotten us what we've got right now in our collective reality. Is that where you want to stay? My guess is not. my guess is that if you're a person who's in this container, that you're actually interested in stepping out of these patterns and creating a new reality and probably saving our literal planet. But that's just a guess on my part. So when we get too caught up in those shadow and light parts of archetypes, they can easily become just another energetic, stale, dry, stuck place. I think in the last video, or maybe the one before, I talked about the tightrope, right? And that we can put ourselves on a tightrope between good and bad, between right and wrong, between any two concepts. And that I feel like when we think about shadow and light, or we want to just be good, and light, that we can get into that like spiritual bypassing aspect. Or if we get into shadow, then we're so tied up in clearing the shadow that we've actually just like wrapped ourselves up in it so much that like we don't even know who we are outside of like some of these tools. So for example, an archetypal tightrope would be something like warrior and victim. So you're pinging back and forth between like, I'm in my warrior, I'm gonna make it happen, and victim, where you're just like, nothing can ever go right, I'm a failure, I can never do this thing, you hurt me, my power is exported to you, to someone else, that kind of thing. Or that you're in your sovereign, meaning your queen or your king, or you're in your child. That there's no two ways about it, that you're either in charge and reigning your domain, or you're throwing a tantrum about the way that things are working. And I just think it's really more complicated than that. It's important to pinpoint these things, but also your specific version is absolutely going to be different than anyone else's. So there is a tool called Shadow Alchemy, and unlike typical shadow alchemists, I take your own narrative, your own experiences, and like my personal skill set is to identify and unpack your particular flavor in your experience. And that could be your experience in this life, or things that you're unconscious about that dictate your patterns that could come from, previous iterations. Like, I love the idea of past lives, so, maybe there's something lurking in there that you're not seeing or you're not realizing that is ancient. Your version of archetypes will not be the same, just like your version of your truest, most authentic self is not the same as anyone else's, right? You carry your own energetic code that needs to be unlocked, cleared, and released into this world. And I'm absolutely here on this planet to help you do that. So is Christiane, so are many other incredible workers who have done this. But I really do feel like it's part of what is going to heal our planet and free us from our unconscious dictating our fate, right? So with all of that being said, I hope that it was very informative for you and you have a clearer understanding of what archetypes are, and that they're useful, but also they're useful to a point. For those that are curious, I have 2 current badass incubators that are going. One is the initial mindset clearing energy work, some of the things that we've already talked about in the last few lives. It's your entry point, especially if you have been drawn to Christiane's work, but you haven't done it yet. You were never actually engaged in one of her masterminds. That's the place for you. And I provide enough in those containers of like the conceptual framework for you to start doing the work, in context of weekly group coaching, a Facebook group, and then I also provide 2 individual 30-minute coaching sessions, either at the beginning or anytime in the course of your contract, just to make sure that you're getting getting what you need, if something like pops up last minute that you need to speak about, or something is kind of like more personal that you don't really want to share in a group format. So I lovingly refer to that container as un-F your mind, because that's kind of what we have to do at first, is like clear all the junk that's lingering in your story and in your history and in your filters, like we talked about, that are how you see the world. Once you've done some of that work, or if you've already done a lot of your own spiritual work, then the next one is more of this archetypal, like manifesting, which we'll redefine soon, and like creating change in your physical reality stuff. It includes diving deeper into the shadow work, integrating divine feminine and masculine aspects of yourself, fully embracing like the magic that can be created in your life, and also in your business, in any domain of your life. So the thing that's really cool about Gloves Off is that you get all the things that you already get in Un-F Your Mind, but you also get the daily unpicking. So I use an app for voice messaging, and you can send me as many voice memos as you want for what maybe is coming up in your reality, and I will kind of hear your voice and hear what's coming up in those messages and in what you're sharing, and help guide you either like what to look at, or give you my reflections on what I'm seeing in those moments. And we get to like clear it and get unstuck right there that day by doing the voice memo thing. So I think that that's a really unique and special experience, that it's not just the once a week group and then the rest of the week you're sort of on your own, that you're really supported by me in a deep way that creates much more core transformation, and also faster, right? Like if we're doing it every day in some capacity, it's gonna get like that real quick. So if you're interested in bringing your current reality and bridging that with what you feel called to do, whether it's something more personal and intimate, like sorting out where you're stuck in your intimate relationships, or in your parenting, or your business, that your business energy has just gotten stale and you know that there's something more, or that you really want to make this like greater global huge collective change, like that you want to be part of that, any reason is a good reason to book a call with me. We'll get really clear on what it is that you want, where you're stuck, and what's in your way, and create that connection between the two. And the best part about that is that you actually get to start clearing these patterns yourself. I think that when we're talking about archetypes, when we're talking about thought leaders, it's so easy for us to get into child, probably, or victim, or any other narrative we want to say, and defer our power to them. And I think that the one thing that I've always appreciated about Christiane's work, and the one thing that I truly take as important and fundamental, is that as you are doing this energy clearing work and this mindset clearing work and making the unconscious conscious, then you are able to start doing it more and more for yourself. You're able to start doing it for yourself and for other people just naturally. It's just part of who you are. It's part of your energetic field. And that means not following anyone else's script or anyone else's blueprint or archetype, and it really means creating that for yourself, like having a guide to create it for yourself. There are no gurus here, as you all know, by virtue of working with Christiane. Like, yes, there are people who have done a lot of their own work, and there are people who know a lot of things, and great. I'm super grateful to Christiane as a mentor in that capacity, and each and every one of us has something to give and something to offer, and something that is just uniquely ours for the world. And so I just really that's why I call my masterminds badass incubators, because I just want to give you the space to really incubate your truest, most badass self at your core. And that when you do that, whatever you offer to the world, whatever is a love offering, that you become deeply compensated for it, and that you just love it, that it frees your soul and fulfills you. And so that's what I'm here to do. So if you are interested in booking a call, I will put the link in the comments below. As always, it's really an honor to be here. I really appreciate anyone who engages with the lives and with the posts, and I look forward to many more during this guest practitioner spot. So much love to all of you. Have a beautiful day and evening and morning wherever you are in the world.